Hi, everybody. This is Rebecca Sinclair, and I'm welcoming you today to our topic that's on humor, health, and the science of happiness. And for some of us, if we're in the Portland area, it is sunny and beautiful out. We're going to enjoy this apparently last day of sunshine. For a while, there's some rain coming. And so let's take a look at our topic today. I have been a therapist for over 20 years and have really studied this particular topic for not quite 20 years, and it's been a fun topic to work with. And there's so many new things that keep coming up around the brain, so we're going to talk about some of that today. Looking at this, what is happiness anyway? I mean, the word happiness sometimes just brings up a more superficial kind of thought or feeling. We're going to use that term today because it's easier than coming up with a lot of different terms that I could throw out here and there. But let's just take a look at what happiness is, and it means many different things to different people. I think the biggest misconception is that it's all about pleasure and feeling good, and that's kind of a relief in many ways. The root word means by chance or an occurrence. So there's a sense of wonder and appreciation of that chance occurrence or those chance occurrences. So we're going to look at different ways to just increase those moments of what happiness could be. And many others have given their own definition. And when polled, we've asked a lot of people to say, well, when you hear the word happiness, if you don't want to use that word, what are some of the things you think of? And what comes up over and over, and any time I've worked with folks or done a presentation, is that it's really a sense of contentment for many people. Or some people say, oh, it's just feeling peaceful for a while, or a sense of calm. Or sometimes it's just enjoying those small daily natural pleasures. Going outside, putting your feet in the grass, looking at the trees or the flowers, or even just going out and standing in the rain and letting it hit your face. Maybe what we used to do when we were younger, didn't worry about our hair, didn't worry about makeup. And maybe many of us don't worry about that anyway. Again, a sense of satisfaction, just feeling satisfied. And some people described happiness in a way of looking forward to something. I don't know about you, but a lot of folks say, and what happens for me is if I'm thinking about a trip I'm going to take and planning it, sometimes that brings me as much joy or happiness or sense of contentment or fun to plan the trip as it is to be on the trip. And so throughout this time today, when we talk about all of these definitions of what happiness might mean, I'll just use the word happiness, and we can sort of replace that word with contentment, peaceful, sense of calm, enjoyment, satisfaction, whatever feels comfortable to you. So let's look at, happiness and why it might be important. A lot of studies come out from all over, and some of the studies indicate that people who are happy accrue a lot of positive outcomes. So some of the things that are noticed for people who have that sense of happiness more often than not really are healthier. It's kind of like having long-term stress, where you've been under stress for a long time. It really takes a toll on your health. So if you're having those negative feelings or thoughts that can be toxic, that can be draining, and that can affect our health. And most of us at some time have been feeling those feelings or been around people who feel toxic at times. But not at a consistent level. And so if you are, there are ways that we'll talk about today to sort of try to support our own inner self around those feelings so that we can move into a healthier space. People who are happy are more creative because they're just more open, their mind is more open, there's more freedom there, so they can be more creative, and they have better relationships. You know, people enjoy being with you. If you're not down in the dumps and really angry and really upset and mad or whatever comes up for you, which, of course, those are very natural feelings also. It's just not over time, on and on and on. And we also are able to see more positive qualities in other people when we're feeling better and feeling a little more positive. And typically people aren't as self-centered when they are feeling happier, because when we're sad or angry or depressed, it's very natural to tend to be more focused on those feelings we're having. So it takes us into ourselves more. And of course, if we're not feeling those feelings, we can feel more generous and other focused. So if we continue to look at the different feelings that we have, we're going to have all kinds of feelings, and every day we'll move through different feelings. And so part of what we want to do is learn how to ride those waves and practice and practice this. It's not always easy, that's for sure. And we can go through this work together here today if you can just take one or two things with you that you might practice and begin to add to the toolbox that you could currently have, add to those skills. It's going to take practice, and it's pretty much a lifelong practice as far as my life is and with the clients that I work with. I worked with a client once for several years, and they had really gone through some really fairly major depression. And when they finally were working through that and coming out of that, what they said, not even that long ago, was, you know what, I am feeling a lot better today. And I realize that maybe 1 or 2 days a month I might get depressed, but it's just the 1 or 2 days I don't sit and believe in my mind and get stuck in my mind that this is going to continue. And it helps me ride that way. So now we have a few questions for you. And you can answer these different questions, and Brenda is working with me. The first question is, how many of you think that happy people are mostly born that way? You can go ahead and vote on that one. And Brenda is on with me. Are you able to see the people voting on that one?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like we have a good poll here. So we have 11% voting happy people are mostly born that way. And 40% voting for environment plays a big role in how happy we are. And 49% of participants say a person can learn to be happy.
Okay. So I can't see that on my screen, and I'm wondering if there's a way to open that up. If you can, and if not, that's okay. Well, let's go ahead and look at the next group of polling questions. So, do you feel you have an optimistic outlook on life, or do you feel you have a skeptical, pessimistic outlook on life? And you may have to share that with me, Brenda, because I can't see that.
Okay, yeah. It looks like it's pretty much 83% voted for optimistic outlook on life, and we have 18% voting for skeptical, pessimistic outlook. Okay,
all right. So if we look at the science of happiness and take a look at what that is, it's studies that have indicated for a long time that our brains are hardwired at birth with certain happiness set points. And some of us just have higher levels than other people do. So for those who feel like they might have more skeptical or pessimistic outlook, the 18%, maybe that part of the happiness set point you were born with is a little lower than other people. Our environment does contribute to our happiness set point, how it is, and the good news is that we can learn how to increase whatever level we come with. So this is a study. I'm not going to try to say Sonia's last name. She's a psychologist at the University of California, Riverside, has done a lot of studies on this. And let's just look at these percentages with the knowledge that they may not be exact percentages, but they're pretty much within the realm of what we're looking at. 50% is what is looked at in most studies that she has done. And she's a part of other studies with other psychologists and psychiatrists. So if we're born, 50% is what we're born with, 10% is environmental, and 40% can be learned. That's good news. I think that a lot of people feel that environment really contributes more to, how we feel and our sense of happiness. But it really isn't necessarily so. We see so many families where there is a very, whatever you would consider, dysfunctional parental unit, and they might have 3 or 4 kids or more, and 2 or 3 of the children really turn out with a much higher sense of happiness, if we're going to use that term, than the other 2. And then you find people who come from what we would, in quotes, say, have a very functional family system and parental unit. And you may see 2 children or so out of that who really fall way below that line. So there is environment does play a part, but it's not the total part. We also want to remember that we're born and hardwired for actually more negative thoughts, and that's different than having a happiness index or set point. And the reason for that is because we are still very connected to our ancestors, and if you look at cavemen who were out looking and hunting and looking for food, they had to look for danger constantly. So their neural pathways in their brain that were the more fearful, more negative pathways were very, very highly developed. And that means that we really carry those with us. But again, the good news is with that 40%, we can learn to shift into a much more positive place where our neural pathways in our brain are much more positive and can really help support us and help us be healthier. So those are some things just to kind of keep in mind. So we have another question for you, and that is, do you believe that older people, 65 years older plus, and of course, some people are a lot older than that, are they generally happier than younger people who are in their 20s and 30s? What would your answer be on that one? And Brenda, you can let me know so that.
Okay. Yeah. But it looks like we have 67% of participants voted for older people are happier, and 34 participants voted for younger people in their 20s and 30s are happier.
Okay. All right. So I think that'll also depend on the age that we are when we answer those questions. And there are a lot of other considerations to take into consideration. So if we're looking at this, there's kind of a new study that was published in the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry. And the researchers analyzed data that was collected from a random sample. I know over 1,500 people doesn't sound like very much. They were the ages of 21 to 99, and in San Diego. So, of course, there's another part of this study that we just need to look at and take into consideration. But what they found in this particular study was, despite the physical ravages, which I think is this is how they termed it. I think that's a little extreme, but some people do feel very ravaged by age. But that older people are actually happier than younger people on the whole. Of course, there are older people that we know that aren't that happy, and younger people that aren't. But if we look at studies done by Dr. Dilip Jeste, he's a geriatric psychiatrist at the University of California. His studies indicated that people in their 20s and 30s had the lowest levels of happiness, and that people kind of peaked around 65 to 70, and they were the happier, at least happier than the younger people. And why is this true? I guess some of the reasoning behind that is that older people are emotionally wiser. And I do want to say to the audience that's viewing, who are young people, that there is some wisdom there. There are some very old souls out there, but with more life experience, sometimes there's more wisdom. And people who are a little bit older tend to know what makes them happy. Not always, but on the whole. Let's just look at it on the whole. And on the whole, they're better able to brush off life's small stressors. Maybe their life experiences that they've gone through have helped them to learn that some of the small things really aren't as stressful as they used to be, and maybe have more experience in making social decisions. So those are what some of the studies are indicating about why older people might be a little happier. And younger people's happiness, people in their 20s and 30s report having the highest levels of depression and anxiety and stress, and the lowest level of happiness. So why is that? Well, the possibilities why younger people may not be as happy as older people, and again, in general terms, after that turbulence of being an adolescent, real life begins and the different demands begin. And when we look at those different demands, they become, sometimes, most of the time would become the financial, educational, romantic, career-oriented, peer pressure concerns. We're not really clear why, but societal functioning does become more complex with the progression of globalization, technology, and all the development of technology and increased competition, and changing roles for young men and women. So those changes happen rapidly. They also affect people who are older, but those are the things that might be contributors also. We're not totally clear why. So let's take a look at how to build more happiness. And again, looking at that word and translating it into sense of peace and the different reports that we first looked at that people would define the word happiness with. We'll review some techniques to practice to have more moments of happier feelings. And we're going to just also remember that simple practices that we can do trigger very, very complex systems in the brain, and those build more positive neural pathways in the brain. So when we look at these practices, and I'm saying practices because we have to keep trying and working on them, just remember those are really touching some very complex systems and helping those get rearranged or strengthened. So the brain and happiness, the heart's been long considered the seat of emotion. Some of the familiar expressions we all hear are "I'm brokenhearted," or "you wear your heart on your sleeve," or "your heart feels like it's about to burst with happiness or joy." Advances in the field of neuroscience have revealed a lot of details about the workings of the brain, but I want to say very clearly right now that we are just touching more information about the brain. It's so complex that we have every day things change, and every month or two we change some of what information is coming out, and so it's a very active and a very live study that is going on. Dr. Richard Davidson from the University of Wisconsin really has been particularly valuable. He not only looks at the traditional field of neuropsychology, but also the field of positive psychology. And he describes the biochemical interaction between the limbic system and the frontal lobes. So if we look at the frontal lobes of the brain, they are both involved in higher level thought and emotion. And so that suggests, of course, that our thinking affects the way we feel, and vice versa, the way we feel can affect the way we think. We used to really think, okay, are you a left-brained or a right-brained person? Because if you're left-brained, you're more into logic, details, and math. If you're right-brained, you're more into creativeness and feelings. But at this point, we're not really, that's too simplistic. It's extremely complex. So as we look at that information, let's think about some of the newer work, which is called the default mode network. And that looks really at the busyness and the wandering in the brain that creates depression and anxiety. So let's think about that again. It's all of that busyness of the brain and the wandering and the chatter in the brain that is what creates more depression or anxiety. So let's just say we're working on computers most of the day. There's a lot of chatter and work going on in the brain. And in order to quiet that down, we want to begin to learn how to intentionally focus on something else so that it calms the brain down. And we'll look at a little bit more of that a little later. I'm going to just mention a bit about the book, which I don't have written into this presentation. The book's title is for My Stroke of Insight. The title is My Stroke of Insight. It was written by Jill Bolt Taylor, who is a PhD scientist and had a stroke December 10th of 1996. And it was a massive stroke in the left hemisphere. And it was one of, you maybe have seen this. It's been on TED Talks, it's been on the news, and she took about 9 years to really recover from it. But she was actually the first person that we know who observed her mind when she was not able to walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of her life. And her mind at the time she was having the stroke was alternating between the euphoria of the intuitive and the kinesthetic right brain, in which she felt complete well-being and peace. And it would alternate between that and the logical sequential part of the left brain. Even though we're talking the left and right brain may not be what we used to really recognize them as, but it would recognize that that left side would recognize she's having a stroke. And what she really realized and has been able to contribute to science from that is really stepping to the right of the left brain can help uncover feelings of well-being that are often sidelined, again, by that brain chatter. And the brain chatter is something that we'll talk about more as we go on. And just briefly looking at that left prefrontal frontal cortex, if we're to look at it very simplistically and say that it is a part of the brain that is a little bit more detail-oriented and analytical, we can get it strengthened in many ways by stepping aside with having both fun and social interaction, and that impacts the brain. You can enjoy pleasurable activities and just doing something that seems to make time stand still. Spending time with loved ones, pursuing meaning in its many, many forms, celebrating accomplishments stimulate the activity in your left prefrontal cortex. Again, thinking good thoughts. That's an amazing, it sounds so simple, but I don't know how many of you get caught up in ruminating or worrying or thinking about something that has happened or something that's coming up that you really don't know what's going to happen, and we go through all these scenarios and we speculate. I mean, it's part of the natural, it's being a human being. We do those things. But repeated exposures to thinking healthy thoughts, avoidance of unhealthy thoughts, and engagement in healthy behaviors strengthens the left prefrontal, I'm trying to talk here today, it strengthens that left prefrontal cortex, the feel-good center of the brain. So ways that we can begin to work with that, and again, this comes from Davidson's study, is to facilitate the activity of those neural networks in our brain that can really help us feel more calm. And of course, meditation, especially mindfulness, is something that is very, it's something that's been going on for many, many years. It's really a piece that people talk about and try or don't feel they can do. But they can really strengthen the activity of that left prefrontal cortex that's chattering, and reduce the activity in the right cortex. So when we talk about meditation and mindfulness, that can mean, again, so many things. It might not mean just sitting there and meditating for 20 minutes or an hour. It might mean taking a 10-minute or even a 1-minute break throughout the day where you step back or stand up or do a stretch and taking a few deep breaths and stepping away from that chatter in the mind as often as we possibly can. And of course, we always say, let's get physical. That's great for the brain. It's great for the body. It's great for our health. But doing it in new and different ways has been found to stimulate the release of those natural feel-good chemicals, those neurotransmitters. And that might just mean, again, standing up at least once every 20 minutes while you're working, and maybe your work includes a lot of walking or standing. So you might want to just recognize that you're getting some physical movement in there. Taking a walk, they say that just a nice stroll after dinner is really a very healthy thing for you to do. And you don't have to get to the gym and pound it out 5 days a week. It's finding something that works for you, something that you can do that you have fun at, whether it's ping pong or some tennis or swimming or something just in your own house. There's all kinds of YouTube on different things you can do, dance, yoga, but it's actually just getting up and moving. I had a yoga teacher tell me once, motion is lotion. And if you're moving, you're really lubricating all those joints and all those parts of your body that need that kind of, they really need that to get your body moving. We all know it, and it's not always easy to do. It's helpful to have a partner to do it with, a friend, a neighbor, someone that keeps you going. So let's just look at what authentic happiness might look like. And a lot of people like to feel like they're simplifying their life, and living more simply seems to bring more happiness for people. Not so much around, not so much clutter, taking a load off. Taking a load off could mean cleaning out a drawer. It could mean organizing something. It could mean letting go of, if possible, of people in your life who really feel toxic and negative, or limiting your time with them, learning how to do that for yourself, and paring down. just paring things down. It's just some basic things that can bring us more authentic happiness. Matt Weinstein is this amazing young man who really does go around the world and talks with businesses about what we need to do to create better work sites and to really have more of that laughter and humor in our workspace. And I have it, the last part of what he stated, in red because it's really the most important piece for me. It's that our work is a way of making meaningful contact with other people, or it could be that way. It's not an end in itself, but it does facilitate an opportunity to make a difference in others' lives. And when you really think about that, if you're not enjoying what you're doing very much in the workplace, you're not enjoying your job, possibly really looking at it, how do I make more meaningful contact with other people? And how do I help make a difference in others' lives? Is one way of shifting from a more negative view of your work to a more positive way. Again, laughter is really one of the best medicines that we can have. It's something that is a big part of how we can shift from those more negative or those more fearful neural pathways to those more positive ones. It's one of the healthiest things we can do. We'll look at just a few of those things that we know after we've had a big, deep laugh. It does boost your immune system. Your blood pressure usually goes down below normal. It increases your circulation, oxygenates your blood, it can decrease pain. And it decreases cortisol, and cortisol is that stress hormone. So just thinking about a funny movie that you, or a sitcom, thinking about it, that lowers your cortisol. And we know that the increase in cortisol can also help increase those fat cells that we can really grow. And so think about those funny movies, get into some laughter, it stimulates both sides of the brain, or all parts of the brain at the same time, which really improves memory and creativity and your ability to learn. There's an actual change in your neurobiology. The Mayo Clinic studies indicated that laughter creates openings to receive information, and it really encourages your mind to move from the ordinary way of looking at things. So again, that sense of creativity. In Japan, they did studies on people who had diabetes. So on number 4, looking at blood sugar levels, after people who had diabetes right after they ate, they did studies on having them get into this raucous laughter, and their blood sugar levels went down. They then did that on people who didn't have diabetes after they had a meal, and the same thing happened. So, gosh, have some lunch and start laughing. It boosts your serotonin, and it's very cathartic. It really helps you cleanse and purge and move forward. You don't need a reason to laugh. People think we need a reason to laugh, but we don't. I mean, we can see a baby sitting in a stroller just laughing away, and most of us don't go up and just say, well, what's so funny? They're just laughing. It's cathartic, it's natural, and it's innate. So it also can help us to establish rapport with shared insight with other people and communicate the willingness to really bond with other people. And it's a great equalizer. So whether you're the CEO of the company or the newest person on staff, it can break down barriers and create loyalty and decrease turnover and increase productivity. Those studies are very clear about what happens in work sites where you're having a little more fun. And so if your CEO or the person at the top of your work ladder doesn't like it that you're laughing, please have them call me. I can give them the studies about productivity and what that does. It helps you shift a perspective on things. It can help you repair a conflict. And it increases your white blood cells. Number 14, I think the concern today for children is that they may be heading for a whole lot of social ills because their play and leisure time is so isolated, or more isolated than it used to be. They lose out on lots of chances for laughter. I mean, they're engaged in the computer, in their games, and the things that they do alone. And laughter is such a social experience that, when you're in a solitary time or completely alone, you're 30 times less likely to experience laughter, which is really a social connector. So it also really helps you move through some embarrassing moments. We spend most of our hours on the job and with other coworkers. So people compared to people who don't find fun in their work, employees report that they're really less anxious and depressed if they're having more fun, more satisfied with their jobs and their lives in general, more creative at work. So we also know that if you're working with other people and something comes up and you even write a thank you note to that person, just a short note, it increases your own productivity to write that thank you note. It's pretty interesting. And if you just say thank you, it will increase that person's productivity 20% for a period of time. So we have some questions for you here. And the questions are, do you have people in your workplace that seem to bring out the best in you? And Brenda, I don't know how you're doing these. Are these separate questions?
They're all on the same slide. So there's,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can tell me.
There's 3 options, yeah. I'm just going to give people a little more time to vote so everyone has a chance here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see how many of you think there are people you work with that bring out the best, or if you have some Grinches in your workplace. And do you think that you can help change a Grinch's attitude?
Okay, I'm just going to close the poll. So we have, 81% of participants have coworkers that seem to bring out the best in them. 66% have Grinches in their workplace, and 46% think they can help change a Grinch's attitude.
Okay, that's great that 81% of you do have people in your workplace that bring out the best. And 66% is kind of what we hear. There's usually a Grinch or two in your workplace, and thinking that you can really help change a Grinch's attitude. I do believe that there are ways that we can. I'm going to just kind of talk a little bit more, so you might pick some things up that you might do if you believe that you can do that. And some people may have tried and aren't able to. Let's just look at how those emotions keep us well. And these are just some very short little quotes that I have. George Burns said, "Happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close-knit family in another city." Some people might really agree with that one. And then, I don't know who wrote this one, but happiness may be genetically influenced, but not genetically fixed. Smiling seems a bit simple, but over time, there's an extraordinary effect in retraining the mind toward being well. And that's really true. We know that just smiling changes our body chemistry again, and it can change the way we feel, even if we're not feeling very positive or very good about anything. And then Martin Seligman posed the question, what is in your heart? Is it yes or is it no? So you might want to be thinking about just saying yes to adding a few of those following practices to improve your health. And again, we're saying these are practices that we do. Again, these are some more practices that can really trigger our complex systems as human beings. And we can start changing a lot of things about our health and our sense of happiness. Part of it is believing in laughter and humor and believing that these things can really affect our neural pathway systems in our brain, because they actually do. Again, we talked about smiling. It actually can lift your mood and the body chemistry change I just noted. And those are some things you might want to just consider. Laughing at yourself, laughing out loud. If you can laugh out loud, and I don't know how many of you do laugh out loud when you're alone, that is so great, because if you're watching something on TV or reading a book or something just gets you, and you can laugh out loud, you might think about, if you're laughing inside, to let it out and laugh out loud. And look for the giggle. If you are sitting in a room or somewhere where you can look around really quickly and find about 5 things that are the color red, take a second and do that. And if you can only find a few, just keep looking for a few more. And the reason I'm asking that is because I don't know how many of you have ever purchased a new car or a new to you car. And then all of a sudden, every 3rd, every 6th, every 10th car on the road is the same model of car that you purchased. It's because you're noticing it. You're looking for it. That's what this exercise of looking around and finding the giggles. If you're looking for the conspiracy, you'll find it. And if you're looking for the giggles, that's what you're going to find also. Try to look forward to one thing each day. I worked with a young woman who just said every morning she woke up and she was going through a really difficult time. She would just think, I'm going to have to look forward to one thing today just to get out of bed. It could have been something as simple as her favorite sitcom, or a new recipe she was going to make, or something that she decided she was going to look forward to that day. And then doing a brief heart coherence meditation every day. Heart coherence meditation, just simply spoken, is when you breathe through your heart. When you take in that deep breath, notice the breath going through your heart, and as you let it go out through your heart. What we've noticed it is, again, a complex system, but it helps balances the cognitive part of our system with our feelings. It helps us get more balanced with that. So we're not totally in our cognitive thinking process, we're totally in a very emotional process. Slowing down. Oh gosh, that's hard to do. But slowing down actually helps us get more done. We're less apt to make mistakes. We're less apt to forget things. We're more attentive to what we're doing. I actually went around and bought some stick-it turtles and put them in different places in my house so that I would practice taking a breath and slowing down. Even moving from brushing my teeth to getting that coffee turned on to whatever. Music is really critical because it touches our life and our heart and our neural pathway system in a way that nothing else really can. So it's very important to turn on music that you like, that's comforting to you. It's re-energizing, calming, and it really helps us shift from one place of possible exhaustion, mind chatter, whatever's going on, into that music. Turn off the news. That may be really hard. It's sort of easy to get addicted to the news, and we've had such intense news for so long. Most people are saying, I really can't hear any more news. It's really driving me crazy. So I've had people say, I'm going to take a sabbatical from the news for maybe one day for a period of time and just see what happens, see how you feel. And practice optimism. If we can be taught to feel bad, we can be taught to feel good. These certainly aren't cure-alls. We know all that. They're not a permanent change in our neural pathway systems because we switch around into different neural pathway systems, but it strengthens the ones that we practice. And it's worth trying some of these things because one small change can make a really big difference. Get silly, and people wonder, well, silly, I don't, silly, that's kind of silly. But silly comes from the Greek word salad. And when you get the meaning of what salad is, it simply means happy, healthy, blessed, and prosperous. So I really do talk about let's get silly. We don't need certain things for happiness. We don't need intelligence, material possessions, power and status, youth, beauty, or more money. One thing we do know that when people win the lottery, they do have a spike in their happiness index for 3 months, maybe 6 months at the most, and then they level right back out to their own happiness index that they really not only were born with, but what they have begun to create. What we do need for happiness is relationships, meaningful work, our health, personal freedom, and our values, financial security, when you can cover the basics of what you really need, some sense of a spiritual connection, or some sense of connection with something, other people. It could be real connection with other people, and enjoyment of those small daily pleasures. And kind of winding down, happiness isn't something ready-made. It comes from your own action. That's true. So slowing down and thinking about our actions and what we say and what we do can really create some happiness. The Dalai Lama said the warm, compassionate, oh, no, I'm looking at something different here. I'm sorry. Albert Schweitzer said that happiness is nothing more than good health and a bad memory. Oscar Wilde said we can be sincere about life without taking it so seriously. Smile at each other, smile at your wife, smile at your husband, smile at your children, smile at each other. It doesn't matter who it is. It can help you grow, to grow. I think that's a misprint, maybe. It can help you grow greater love for each other. And sometimes your joy is the source of your smile. And that's something that Thich Nhat Hanh said, that basically smiling can be the source of your joy, and it can, as we said, change the way you're feeling. So we're going to just end with smile, be well. I know it seems simple. It's not at all. These things take a lot of practice. I hope that you were able to take one or two things from this presentation to help increase your neural pathway systems, to strengthen them, to build them, to help them grow, so that when you do get into a place where you're really feeling stressed or tired or not so happy or sad, you can feel those feelings and you can know and acknowledge they're there, but you can know you can move through them and jump shift into some of those stronger neural pathway systems. So have a really good day, and thank you very much for joining us for this presentation. You can connect with your EAP, and there's the number.